I'm going to talk about a psychological operation which took place recently, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. Anyone who can guess what it is, shout out and I'll give you a free copy of my film. Now, I spoke in the last talk about the empire which is currently trying to engulf the world, trying to take over the world and create a one-world government. And it has used 9/11 and 7/7 as an excuse to take over the Middle East. And I went through the countries that have had regime change since 9/11. So we had the invasion of Afghanistan, we had the invasion of Iraq, we had the deposing of Colonel Gaddafi, and various other countries in this region also had regime change. Here they are. Now, some people say, well, there was revolutions in some of those countries. I disagree with that. I think that there were Asian provocateurs that triggered all of those regime changes to make them more compliant to the US agenda. There were countries which did not need to be changed that were already pro-US. We'll colour them in. We're left with 3 countries which are undoubtedly targets of the US. Syria, there was a vote in Parliament last year to determine whether we were going to invade and take military action against Syria, a country that's got nothing to do with the UK. We've got no right in that country to go into it militarily. Iran, rhetoric about Iran's alleged nuclear program. Pakistan, they've been dropping drone attacks willy-nilly on that country. So those 3 countries are definitely targeted. Now, let's just look at the modus operandi of the group that's doing this, the group that is creating regime change across the world. Right? Their modus operandi, whoever they are, they've targeted countries with a low approval of the US, Islamic and undemocratic, what we would consider dictatorships. They're the types of countries they've gone for. And they've always manufactured excuses and planted them in our media before they've gone into those countries. Okay? Now I'm going to list some of their excuses that they've manufactured. So they used the excuse of 9/11 to invade Afghanistan. They used weapons of mass destruction to invade Iraq, which they didn't have. They've used Lockerbie to demonise Libya. Libya had absolutely nothing to do with Lockerbie. There's no evidence that Libya were involved in that. But Lockerbie was plastered all over our newspapers before they deposed Gaddafi. Chemical weapons is the rhetoric coming out about Syria, and Iran is nuclear weapons. So there's the modus operandi. They go for countries with a low US approval, Islamic, non-democratic, and they always think of an excuse. Now let's just say, for the sake of argument, that this group, which is trying to bring about a one-world government, chooses Southeast Asia as its next target. So we'll look at point 1 on my chart and ask which countries have a low US approval rating. Let's look at Burma. So the green represents how many people in that country approve of the US regime. So in Burma it's... Say again?
Are you talking about projects within the American century?
Well, that links into this, yeah. No. So in Thailand, there is a 60% US approval rating. In Vietnam, 71% of the population approve of Barack Obama and the US. In Cambodia, it's 62. The Philippines, it's 85. Malaysia, it's 34. Indonesia, it's 38. So that's what those group of countries think of the US. Now let's look at religion. Point 2 on the list. Which of these are Islamic countries? Because they're the countries that they go for. Malaysia and Indonesia are predominantly Islamic. The rest are Buddhist. Think the Philippines is Roman Catholic. Now let's look at democracy. Which of these countries are the most or least democratic? Well, you can actually look on the Global Democracy Ranking website, and Britain is position 10, the United Kingdom. This is America. And right at the bottom, the lowest one of all those countries in Southeast Asia is Malaysia. So, which country is going to be targeted in that region? We've got Islamic countries, the lowest US approval rating and the least democratic. They're going to target Malaysia, in my opinion, if they're going to go into that region and regime change it. But the modus operandi, as I explained before, they need a reason to go into Malaysia. Yeah? No one's going to believe Malaysia have got nuclear weapons. What can we do? Yeah. Anyone actually believe that the CIA or NORAD did not know where that missing Malaysian flight was? There are so many devices on that aeroplane which report back to Rolls-Royce, Boeing, CIA, NORAD would have to have known where that missing airliner was. In my opinion, all those news reports are complete bullshit. The US knew where that missing airliner was. In my opinion, this is an attempt to make Malaysia look like a tin pot dictatorship, just to nudge the public's perception into the view that Malaysia's regime really needs to be gotten rid of. Now, Barack Obama went to visit the Malaysian Prime Minister round about the time that when this Malaysian airliner was supposedly missing. And he was, all the usual rhetoric, you know, the US is doing everything it can to help the Malaysian authorities find this missing plane. What a lie. Does anyone see anything in the body language of these photographs? I think Obama knows that Malaysia is on the list. And Malaysia did hold public hearings, sort of a mock trial, where they put George Bush on trial for war crimes and they voted him guilty. And they put that on state television. Right? Now, we've had other negative stories coming out of Malaysia, or stories that have come out of Malaysia that have had a negative twist put on them. So we had this guy, Gareth Huntley, went missing, and then he's found in the jungle. Now, what does that newspaper photograph say to you? It says to me, there's some kind of militaristic regime that we can't really trust, and it's putting in danger our attractive Western people, so it's a dangerous area. That's what that says to me. And there were reports that he'd supposedly had his throat slit, but I don't think there's been any post-mortem evidence of that. Obviously, it's a tragic story. Now, I read one newspaper report of the recent thing in the Ukraine, which said that, again, another Malaysian plane, they said, well, Malaysia are obviously partly to blame because they shouldn't have flown that plane over a war zone. So again, they're using these stories to demonize Malaysia, and this story made me laugh. This was just a few weeks ago. Mystery of British honeymooner who was being quizzed by police after he disappeared for 2 days in Malaysia, leaving his new bride frantic. So, guy gets married, goes on holiday to Kuala Lumpur, has an argument with his wife, goes in the huff for 2 days, and then comes back. Boom. That's the story. That happened to me once. I didn't end up in Mail Online. Right? It's a non-story. That happens every day. Why is it in Mail Online? I'll tell you why. Because they're using it to remind you of Gareth Huntley. So this story, this guy who's just wandered off from his wife, last month the body of Briton Gareth Huntley, 34, from Cricklewood, London, was found in a turtle conservation resort in Malaysia. We can't trust the Malaysians. All right? So they're using any story that they can to try and demonize their regime. So, you heard it here first. It wouldn't surprise me if there's military action in Malaysia at some point in the next 5 years. But what they have to do, they have to just do this psychological operation on the public so that it's not opposed. Now, I'm going to talk about freedom of expression because I think this links in to this agenda to break down trust in society. This is Section 5 of the 1986 Public Order Act. Up until very recently, it was illegal to insult someone, right? But the police were abusing this law. Anyone who was shouting something out in the crowd, the police were using it just to arrest them. And what is an insult to one person could be a compliment to someone else. So freedom of speech groups were really annoyed at this law, that it was being abused, and they wanted it reformed, right? So they started a campaign in May 2012 to drop that word insulting from the law. So it would not be illegal to insult people, right?